welcome back to another interview with another fabulous author with important books, all part of the Independent Thinking Online Children's Book Festival we've been running for the last few days, really, in partnership with the Sue Atkins Book Club. And this book we're looking at today is one that's very close to my heart in all sorts of reasons. It's such a lovely book. It's such a powerful book. It's such a useful book. And it'll be good to sort of explore that. And I think every school should have at least one copy of this, and every home that needs it should know how to get hold of this book. Love Will Never Die, Helping Children Through Bereavement by Clare Shaw. And I'm delighted to be joined by Clare. And she can tell us a little bit about herself, her work, how she came to be writing this book, what books led into this book. So Clare, welcome, and yeah, tell us about yourself.
Hi, thank you for having me, first of all, and putting on a wonderful festival. It's been super. I first started with children's books maybe 4.5 years ago now. My husband had gone away with work for 6 months, and at the time the children were 9 and 6. And my 6-year-old, who was Mr. Confident, day 3 of school, took his bag off me halfway across the playground and went, "See you later, Mum." So he was absolutely fine and settled, and within a few weeks of my husband being away, he started to backtrack and he started to get quite clingy, and it got to that horrible point where you're handing the child over to the teacher while he's crying and running away, and it was absolutely horrible. And I couldn't figure out, I couldn't work it out at all, although it's very obvious now I know why. But I went out to visit my husband, and his colleague's wife was also going out the same weekend. So they connected us. We sat at the airport together, and within minutes, she knew everything about me, knew everything about Austin and all his troubles. And it turned out she was a very highly qualified educational psychologist. Yes. So, she talked me through everything he was going through, told me how to help him. Had a lovely weekend away, flew back by myself, and from nowhere I wrote a poem all about Daddy being away and how like had hints and tips in there. Apparently it's called a therapeutic story, I found out since, but it was all it all just flowed and came and was there. And when I got home, I popped a note on Facebook and just said to my friends, would anybody read it? You know, is this worth pursuing? Is it worth doing something with? And a friend of mine read it and immediately asked me to go in to the school that she'd recently started at to read with her service children. I said, okay. So I printed off some pages with pictures I'd found on the internet, sellotaped it all together, and went in with this pretend book. And they all loved it, and it ended up being this. And it went down super well. Schools around here, because we're in a forces area, I've been into so many schools in the area, and the children have just adored it, and it's actually spread around the country now. And there is a mummy version to go with, because there are so many mums around here who have to go away as well. So then on the back of this, something started inside me, and I thought, I quite enjoyed that. I quite like going and seeing the children. I love the feedback that I get. And I was 11 when my brother died. I'd started school in the September, and he died on the 20th of December, and we had his funeral on Christmas Eve. So it was a very, very strange time. Straight back into school in January. Life just carried on, and I've had problems for the whole of my life, basically. I've had a few breakdowns, I've had therapy, and the last bout of therapy that I had, it all came back to not having grieved properly for my brother. So whilst I was doing school visits, I started talking to the teachers about the idea of writing a bereavement book for children, and the feedback, because they knew this book, the feedback was really positive, because I write from the child's point of view and it's very direct and honest, and that was what I wanted to do with bereavement. And they said, you know, that quite often they'll read a book, beautiful books, but they're so metaphorical that often the message is missed with the child. So I wrote Love Will Never Die, and it talks about death, and it talks about the funeral, and it uses honest language. and allows the child to ask questions. And one of the biggest things for me was I once cried in front of mum, which then made her cry, naturally grieving as a family. But I felt that I'd upset her. So I did not cry. I still struggle crying in front of mum. It's just something that's always stayed with me. So I absolutely had to make sure that they knew that it was okay to let out their emotions. So that was what happened here.
It is so okay to let out your emotions. You even include a tissue.
Yes.
To the page. It's okay.
I love my little packet of tissues. Yeah.
I mean, apart from a beautiful looking book and beautifully illustrated and so well written and so clear, the fact that you've got little envelopes for special things, the tissues, just little surprises in it, space for them to a place for them to write and draw. Yeah. It's just and the photographs as well as and really clever photographs. As well as the illustrations, there's just so much. There's so much there, and like you say, you did mention the funeral. I want to come back to that, but I just want to pick up something that you said about forces children, service children, because we haven't touched on. Quite a few of the authors have talked about attachment theory and have written books around supporting children who struggle to leave mum or dad or the carer when they go to nursery or go to school. And it's been really interesting to explore that from a clinical psychologist's point of view or from a parent's point of view. But we haven't touched on service children. I know from some of the work I've done in the past that there's a whole sort of special understanding around attachment and around fear and anxiety, as well as unfortunately bereavement as well with service children. So are you a service mum? Is that?
No, my husband, he works for the MOD and he had an opportunity to go away and work on a project. He was in Rome for 6 months, so I don't feel sorry for him.
Okay, so you get an airplane to Rome, not Afghanistan. Yeah, okay, yeah, forget that. All is well. But you're clearly sort of you're amongst others who are
yes,
where the anxiety and the fear and the threat of not seeing the parent again, mother or father, is there. And is that how does that manifest itself in your community that you know, and how do they? What extra help do they need? What extra help can schools give?
There are a lot of schools, particularly obviously where we are, there's they have special service clubs that they put on so that the service children are recognised. And I know that the school my child's at, they meet every couple of weeks, a little after school club for them. And so if one of the parents is away, they'll keep track of where the parent is. Some of the schools have like matching teddies, so the dad can take it on the ship and the child keeps it at home, and the school very much keep in touch with the ship and do it as a whole group, so they all know that they've got support and children who go through the same thing. And actually one of the schools locally, 2 dads on board discovered that their children were at the same school because they'd got the little teddies. So there are so many ideas that they do to support the children. It is fantastic. I think more probably needs to be done. Some schools don't do a lot. Some schools go over and above. So it's trying to find, there's a wonderful organisation that started up around about 4 years ago from Winchester University, and they now try with all the schools around the country, they try and encourage the support for the service children. So
yeah, okay. I've got an image of 2 servicemen on a ship walking out with a teddy bear going, oh, I've got one like that. And I'm thinking about it with regard to the pandemic and lockdown and this idea that children knew their relatives and friends were somewhere in the world, but were worried about them and couldn't get to them. Are there lessons from the world of service education that we can learn, that all schools can learn with regard to things like the pandemic, do you think?
Gosh, I'm not sure, because I think it's such a, oh gosh, you've thrown me completely in. I was going to say, when a child is in this, has a parent in the services, quite often they're born into that being the norm. So with the pandemic, if somebody was out of the way, it's not normal. So it probably will have thrown families quite considerably.
Who aren't used to that, the norm of the parent being away and being concerned about them.
Yeah.
So okay, so I wonder if they're better able to cope with the chaos and the anxiety and the unknown that we've had over the last 18 months than children who haven't experienced that. I hadn't thought of it in that way. So it'll be interesting to sort of, we don't know how the pandemic is going to pan out over, and this came up in other conversations and talking about epigenetics now, stressful situations like wars, world wars, famine, all those sorts of things, it become embedded in our genes, and they get carried forward. So it'll be interesting to see over the coming generations who has fared most. Which brings us to this one. I'm just going to reach behind me because this is a book I wrote with my children. It started off as a little book of bereavement, and we've sort of updated it because they're older now, independent thinking on loss. And it's written from the perspective of my children and myself. When the children lost their mum, Phoebe, my youngest, was 9, I think, at that point. She's now 20, well, she's 22. And the experiences that she had and that I had with her are basically that you've taken the inside of Phoebe's head when she was 9 and made sense of it. And I'm going to make sure that she has a copy of this. She's doing a lot of work at the moment supporting families. She has a thing called a Kuchi Care, cuddle in a box, and she's sending stuff out to families who need that cuddle, especially children who have been bereaved. And I'm going to show her this, and maybe we can sort of include that in the box as well, because it is so. There is so much confusion. And there's so much not knowing what to do, and all the world around them don't know what to do. And like I say, do you cry? Do you not cry? If you're not crying, that means there's nothing wrong. And if you are crying, then I've upset you. Therefore, I don't want to upset you. And this is adults as well as children, if you like. So it's so powerful, this book, in terms of giving permission for all the feelings and all the thoughts to be there and be talked about and to come out and to be natural. And I know. And I feel your pain with regard to losing your brother and not grieving. I can. Well, I mean, one of the things we touch on is anniversaries are important. So I mean, Christmas Eve must be a challenge for you.
It's a lot better now because I've got my own children. So it changed drastically once you've got children to focus on. But unfortunately for us as a family, a year and a day after my brother died, my maternal grandfather died. So it was another Christmas that was mucked up with bereavement and everything else. So yeah, we had a lot of years where it was very tricky. Yeah, it was really tricky. But I've heard, because there's a lot of funeral directors around the country who use this book and hand it out to families in their care. And the feedback we've had is that it's opened up family conversations. So it's not just allowing the child to say what they're feeling, it's actually got the whole family sat around the dinner table talking about what's happened, which for me is amazing, because I think death is such a taboo subject, and particularly in front of children. People do not like to talk about death in front of children. And so when something's happened, adults will cover their emotions in front of the children, but the children model their behaviour on what they see. So it becomes such a catch-22 with what's best, because that child needs to see the adult that's with them express their emotions, or they never will. I know I didn't, I kept it in and it damaged me. And, there are frightening statistics out there about, young offenders. There's 41% of young offenders who have been bereaved, and 25% of under 20s who die by suicide, who've been bereaved as a child. And it only takes a little tiny intervention like a book like this, or one of the other wonderful books that are out there, that just that little bit of help and understanding. And school, like that book for schools is fabulous, because I know there's a number of funeral directors that I work with who are banging the drum to get bereavement put on the national curriculum. And I mean, it would be wonderful. It's the one sure thing in life, and they don't talk about it.
I had a conversation via the authors that I've met in the Sue Atkins Book Club with a lady, I can't remember her name now. She's a former palliative care specialist, and she's written whole books about dying. And we had a sort of an email conversation about how death should be on the curriculum.
Yes.
Because like you say, it's the only sure thing, and we know it's going to happen at some point with a child, whether it's the death of the rabbit or the death of the brother or mother or whoever. So let's address it. Let's get it out there. I did some work with Winston's Wish, who are a great charity for bereaved children, and we these thunks, these sort of philosophical questions I came up with. We did I think produced about 30 thunks on death as starting points for conversations the children can have with the adults around them, with each other. Around death, and but it is such a taboo subject, and we shy away from it, and it just builds up damage, doesn't it?
Massively. And something that I did, just skipping ahead slightly, we're going to various conferences with Love Will Never Die. One of the questions I was asked at every conference by many people was whether I'd got anything for teenagers, because there's nothing out there for teenagers, but there is now. I wanted to send you a copy of this, actually, because it only came out a week or two ago, and apparently my feedback so far has been fabulous. So.
Oh, right. Well done for doing that. Because yes, there's so little out there, or else, like you say, it's so wrapped up in euphemisms, especially with the younger children, about them going to sleep or something about a beetle, and it's just like, no, tell us how it is. Tell us how it is. Can you read it? Can you find a little bit and read from that one for us, please?
Of course I will. I'll go for my tissue page.
I'll get my tissue ready.
So, at times I forget they're gone, then remember in the blink of an eye. Remembering can be upsetting. Thankfully, I know it's okay to cry. There are times I get quite scared that others may leave too. You can never know what's going to happen. How could you have a clue? It's okay to have these fears though, but I do try not to worry, or else I'll go through life forever scared or in a hurry. Instead, I need to enjoy myself, making the most of every day. I think of all my special people, those who've gone and those who stay. I often look up to the stars or far off into space and imagine I can see them, which brings a smile onto my face. As time goes on, I think of them a little less each day. That doesn't mean I've forgotten and can help show that I'm okay. On days in years to come, they may from time to time pop randomly into my thoughts and send a shiver down my spine. No matter what life brings, no matter what time goes by, I will always love that special person because love will never die. And I did that well because I normally cry when I read that line.
Hence the tissue, we waterproof pages, shouldn't they? Yes. It's lovely, and lovely rhyme, and it just works so well. The line, there are times I get quite scared that others may leave too. It just resonated. So I'm going to fill it now. Resonated so much with all my kids, but my youngest especially. That constant now, that sense of apprehension that something, the worst is going to happen at any point. And if she can't get hold of me quite quickly, then the catastrophic thinking and then the anxiety that sort of comes with it. But it's okay. But and just validating all of those thoughts, all of those messed up, mixed up, but entirely natural thoughts in a simple little book like that is so important. So thank you for writing that. Did you do the deal with the roving bookshop so they can get the book through?
Yes,
the festival website there. So that link is on the website. Thank you for that. How else can people get hold of you?
My website is cskidsbooks.com. And I also have a shop on Etsy, which actually has a little bit more added value. I do bereavement boxes and deployment boxes on there, and emotional literacy, because I have a book about emotional literacy as well. So there's one about emotions and feelings on there, and the Etsy shop is CS Kids Books. I think all my handles are CS Kids Books, so you can find me that way. That
works. That's simple, and that's on Twitter and Instagram and
yeah. Not so good at Instagram, but yes, you can follow me.
There's an art to that. I haven't got it either yet.
No.
Okay. It's lovely to speak to you, and just genuinely thank you for that book. You will never know quite how far that book will reach and what good it will do, but I just reassure you that for everybody who reads it, who needs it, it will just do so much good. So thank you for that, and keep writing, keep them coming. We all need help in that sort of way. Okay, thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much.